man, the myth, and the legend. You're here, the man with all the swag as a coach, the man with all the swag as a person, and the man with all the swag on the golf course. So thanks for being on the Compete Mentality podcast, and can't wait to dive into this. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. So to our listeners, can you just give us a little bit of your background and what got you to where you're at today?
Sure. So I have another professional life. It's real corny to say, but I've got a profession and an obsession. So I've been completely volunteering and been a basketball coach on the girls' side for, I'm almost embarrassed to say now, but I mean, probably approaching 20 years now. So my first class of kids that I helped kind of through club basketball were the 2009s. But have just been involved in coaching. I never would imagine that it would have gotten to the level that it got with the level of player and how involved the shoe companies have gotten. And we'll get into, I'm sure, some of the particulars as the conversation goes on. But I just really love the game because I played it as a kid. I love to watch it. It's a game that made a lot of sense to me. And it's a really great way to kind of give back to a game that helped mold me as a person, did a lot for me, taught me a lot about, self-control, competitiveness, hard work, focus, all those lessons that, translate into being a successful basketball player. I wasn't the best player. Somebody sent me a picture actually, not long ago of a huddle where, I wasn't a starter. I was like standing behind the coach and, little did I know that I was training to be the guy that was actually sitting in the chair in the sports coat instead of in front. But it makes a lot of sense. And I've been able to develop a lot of really good relationships and help a lot of kids along the way. And that's what keeps me going.
So I was coached by Danny. So you had the 09 class, the likes of Courtney Osborne, the Paige Smiths. I remember going down and doing training sessions with them. And so I came in the 10 class. And to our listeners, Danny was honestly, and I tell him this all the time, like he was one of my favorite coaches I ever had, just when it came to skill development and really pushing me to do things I never even knew that were possible. And I know that you're a big Gannon Baker fan. So now as a trainer, I can look back and like we were doing the Gannon Baker like an hour straight of training in the gym, and it was phenomenal what you were doing for girls basketball then, and it's phenomenal. You said 20 years, just the journey and what you're doing for girls basketball now. So thank you for impact you've had in my life. I know on so many other girls' lives. So what would you say? So you've been 20 years. What is your why? So what keeps you in the game, especially on the girls' side?
Well, it all stems back from the kids, and it sounds like such a fake answer, but it's absolutely the truth, right? So, and you had that really eloquent, introduction about me, but you sent me a message, honestly, the other day, talking about how much, I had helped you kind of mold you and prepare you for college. And on really the mental side, those are the paybacks that I get. I mean, I'm a 100% volunteer guy. Like we don't get paid for this. Most of the club coaches probably don't on the girls' side, to be honest with you. But when you hear that you've been able to impact a young person's life, look, how do you not want to do that again? It's just one of those things. I had obviously everybody knows how close I am, let's say with, Sydney Parrish, and, you'll keep in touch with that kid. She's back in town now after playing in the tournament in San Antonio, and just sitting down over a meal with her while she was back was just talking about some of the things that she had talked about, or that she had applied from, just her exposure for what we were able to do for her. That stuff's really important to me, to be able to mold, help young kids and mold their lives and have a positive impact. I had it for me, and I hope to be that for other young players as well.
For our listeners, so you talk about Sydney Parrish, who was Miss Basketball last year, has finished her freshman year at Oregon. Can you just share some of the players that you've had the pleasure of mentoring and coaching throughout since '09?
Well, Courtney, you mentioned yourself. I mean, that you were the first Miss Basketball that I had the opportunity to coach, and you went on to do big things at Purdue. And then, really what gave us some national notoriety in the club that we had coached in. A couple of years later, we had a kid named Taya Reimer, who now a lot of your listeners, embarrassingly might not even know who that is, but I think she finished the year as, I think, maybe the second best player in the country, like ranking wise. Allie Patberg finished with our club. She was a Miss Basketball, followed by Jackie Young, Lindsay Corsaro in the same class was a McDonald's All-American. That 17 class had Dana Evans, Carissa McLaughlin. The 18 class, even in the fall, we had the opportunity to coach Amy Dilk before the knee injury. 19 had Miss Basketball Jory Allen, 20, of course, Parrish, Madison Layden, who was the Gatorade Player of the Year, 21, Jayla Smith just won, who's going to Purdue. Yep. So I know that you're close with her and that recruitment. So it just keeps going. But, and I said this in another podcast, and I think I probably said it the exact same way, but at the risk of redundancy, I say it again, I almost hate talking about those kids that I've coached that were so good, because I think it's almost so disrespectful to the 80, 90 girls who weren't the Gatorade Player of the Year. I had a phone call, I'll cite you an example. I had a phone call with a kid named Hope Savory. She's out of Louisville, Kentucky. All of your Indiana listeners probably don't know who she is, but she was the co-freshman of the year in her conference this year, going to Western Kentucky. She had a very slow recruitment, people coming in and out. And I had a phone conversation with her. I mean, she kept me on the phone for 45 minutes, just catching up and talking about how happy she was, talking about how it's such a great fit, talking about, the relationship that she has with her coaches, how much fun she had and how much she misses kind of what we did. Going back to the first question, that stuff's extremely motivating to me, but Hope Savory might not show up on somebody's list of all-time greats that I've coached, but is just as important to me, as, all due respect to her, but Sid Parrish.
Mm-hmm. And that goes back to your why, and that's why you're a great coach. It's all about, you have to have the trust of your players, and you have to build the relationships. And a lot of people think it's all these, if you have the best plays, you have the best this, you have the best skill set, you guys got the best sponsors. It's like, that's just icing on the cake. Yeah. It starts with, and that was one thing that attracted me when we had phone conversations of, I could play for this guy. Like, this guy is legit. He's real. You're down to earth. You speak the truth, and you will tell somebody the truth in love. If they, if you need to get better at being a leader or talking, like, you're not afraid to tell somebody that, because it's going to make them better. So really appreciate that.
Well, to that point, I actually just 15 minutes ago got a text from a parent. I got on a kid this weekend. I mean, it's funny. It was something silly. Like they missed a switch. We were switching in a basketball game. They missed a switch. Kid drives in for a layup. And I got on her in front of everybody. And it's funny because the parent texted and like celebrated it. It's like, listen, you got to hold my kid accountable, and I appreciate it. And it was in front of everybody, but it does send a message that, look, if you're going to hold that kid accountable, then you're going to hold me accountable too. But you always responded to that, Courtney. I mean, that's always something that the best players always demand. It's tough to coach really, really good kids. It is. People think that I've got an easy job and that I just roll it out there, but it's hard when you have talent of the level of a Courtney Moses then at the time. It's very difficult, I think, to hold a kid like that accountable, because you're so good at your craft. So that's part of it, but I think it's a two-way thing. You got to hold them accountable, but then the kids got to lock eyes with you and nod their head. And I'll tell you, the kid that missed a switch didn't miss another switch that rest of the basketball game.
No, she didn't. That's awesome. I love hearing that story. So you guys were playing today. I know you said you guys had like 6 teams that are out playing. Give us a few of the kids on that you are coaching today. Let's go with the highest age group you have. I know like Shades on that team. Give us some highlights from the day.
Yeah. So the pandemic has presented issues in finding competition. Mm-hmm. And so there hasn't been a lot of national tournaments that have taken place up to this point. Indianapolis, and maybe because of the leniency with which we're approaching the pandemic, has provided an opportunity to play against some high level competition. So we got that today. This weekend alone, we played against kids like KK Bransford, Alexia Mobley, Kyla Oldeker, just a long list of kids that will go on to do great things. So that was a lot of fun, but I didn't answer your question, but the 22s that we actually only have 2 on our basketball team. It's Destiny Hooks and Jessica Carruthers. And Jessica Carruthers, to bring her to note, she was formerly a gym rat, left for another club, played with another club, and then came back when she was old enough, I guess, to play for me. But she just came off of a state championship run with which she was fantastic. And I think she had a game high 25, I want to say, in that game, which kind of follows a trend. If you remember, Jayla Smith as a junior had a game high 22 the year before. Sydney Parrish as a junior had 30. So juniors in the state championship the last 3 years at least have been the kid. What's interesting is next year, the juniors, if the trend holds true, then maybe one of these kids that are on my basketball team, the 23s now, maybe we're talking about them in 365 days. You mentioned Ashlyn Shade, and she's certainly a name that draws a lot of attention. People know who she is. She's got a lot of media attention, the way that a Parrish and the way that a Layden had. But Courtney, she was extraordinary today. She was just extraordinary. And some national publications will have her in the top 10 in the class. Some will have her 20 something. But I'll tell you, look, if there was a better player, if there was a better player's performance over 5 basketball games than hers, show it to me, because she was extraordinary. And she's, people always want to say, well, she's young, but she's not that young anymore. She's been playing a high level of competition for a really long time. But the rest of our 23s are great. We had a kid, Carson Norman, who we played in 2 championship games so far, hit 5 threes in the first championship game, had a game high 19 in that basketball game when we won the Shamrock Classic. And then today hit just a dagger 3. It can only be described as a dagger 3 today. We have a rule, Courtney, that we don't like to throw the ball to the corner unless it's for 3. It just schematically, it just doesn't work for us. And we only really want to throw the ball to the corner if help comes off a strong side corner. Well, situationally, you might think 2 minutes left in the basketball game, the other team has 3 fouls to give. You're going to think you want to run clock, but to her credit, help came off the strong side corner, threw the ball. She knows, because she listens and she's super coachable, that we don't throw the ball to the corner unless it's for 3. And the kid put it on the net. And so Carson Norman out of Bedford North Lawrence is another 23. We have Layla Hall, who I know that and you've been around her and trained her. She does some extraordinary things. People think that she's one of the 50 best 23s in the country. We have a kid out of South Bend, Washington named Rashonda Jones. I actually just joked on Twitter with her high school coach. We were trying to give fouls late to try to burn clock today. And I was joking with him that she didn't listen to me, because instead she just picked the girl clean, assisted Layla Hall, got a layup, and we're up 5 with 12 seconds left. And we end up winning the basketball game. And then we have Mackenzie Thomas out of Carmel, who's been she might be one of the smartest basketball players that I've ever coached. I mean, this kid is unbelievable with her ability to follow the game from an intellectual perspective. And then we have two 24s, which is, you say that almost casually, like, yeah, we got a couple 24s, but like, if you think about the level of competition that we play today, like KK Bransford, for example, like, there probably aren't 5 better players in the country than KK Bransford, and Chloe Spreen and Julianne Woodard out of Bedford North Lawrence and Jennings County, respectively, are 24s who just finished their freshman season of high school basketball and are out on the floor. I mean, Julianne Woodard was playing against Lexa Mobley, who's going to Louisville, and Kyla Oldeker, who probably has the biggest post recruitment anywhere in the Midwest, 2 of the best. And, here's this little kid from Jennings County, 2024, named Julianne Woodard, is playing against them. So, the team might not be the most, maybe not the household names, but the kids work hard. They execute really well. And to close this thought before we move on, they're really smart. Like today in the semifinal, everything was ball screen. We brought all the action on the ball. Here's what we're going to do. We want to create mismatches, drag away, create switches. We were doing all of that with all the stuff on the ball. Well, in the championship game, the way that they defended us and the certain way in which they hedged us, we had to take ball screen out. And this is 2 hours later. We won 2 basketball games, one by setting ball screen literally for the entire 32 minutes. And we win another where I actually said during a huddle, I don't want any action on the ball. So to have a group that can take that kind of adjustment, I think that's a very special group, and I'm super excited about it. I'm really happy for them. They really deserve this.
So you talked through a lot of your players are high-level players, and you talked a lot about basketball IQ. So you're talking about we played 32 minutes, we're doing ball screens, and we played another 32. We had to completely adjust, which that's the college game, and that's that next level that you're able to take players to. I've always wanted to ask you this question, and as a player, I'm just listening and learning. But where do you go to, like, as a coach, because you're super smart basketball IQ? Do you have a mentor, or is this just stuff that you just study the game and watch the game and know the trends of the game, as we like to call it, that are going on, and are able to teach that?
Yeah, so I'm a fan of the game. I mean, look, you asked the question, probably already knowing the answer, okay? But I'll corroborate what you're saying. I used to watch a lot of television. We run a couple of sets where we enter to the elbow, for example, right? And there's a really creative way that Tara does it out at Stanford, where they'll drop a kid, set a diagonal screen, and then roll back to the elbow. We were just throwing it straight to the elbow. I actually just took my phone out, took a picture of it, and now we have what we call the Stanford entry to the elbow. So that's not mine. I mean, I don't, maybe Tara made it up. Maybe she stole it from somebody else, but the old cliche that every coach just steals from each other is 100% true. Have we written our own stuff? Sure. Have we stolen it? Yeah. Have we helped other people steal our stuff? Sure. But everything that we've done is some variation of studying guys like D'Antoni, Calipari, Tara Vanderveer, and it's sometimes you study it and you just say, hey, listen, that's not for me. I don't run it, but I find it interesting. And this is really probably the nerdy side of me, is that I really enjoy the game to the level that I will study it. I wasn't the greatest college student. Believe me, I wasn't the best college student, but I'll study this stuff. I'll just watch TV and I'll talk about it. Anybody that's ever played for me will tell you, like, I don't know where he gets this stuff. He just talks. So
No, that's awesome. And you have to, I think that's a talent you have, though. I mean, not a lot of people will say, I like to sit down and I like to study the game and be a student of the game. Like, as a coach, and I think I always talk to our players we train, like, you guys have to be watching the game. Like, you got to watch and you got to learn. And I think that's a lost art, that kids aren't watching the game. It's like, I can remember, this was back before like smartphones and stuff, but getting up in the morning, open the paper, finding ESPN, ESPN2 on, the night that the women's games are on, and seeing who's playing. At the time, I was always looking, when's Tennessee and UConn playing, because that was the big names. Pat Summitt was coaching then. You had
Yeah.
Gino was there. He's still there. But those were the teams, that you got to watch and you got to learn how to play the game.
Yeah.
So I just think it's a lost
Yeah.
art all the way around. So you
Well,
talk
and
about,
you mentioned kind of this long line too. Certain kids will remind me of kids that we've had in the past. This kid's like Jory Allen. This kid's like Madison Layden. This kid's like Courtney Moses. This kid's like Allie Patberg. And you draw back on your experience to say, well, this is what Courtney liked, or this is what Courtney did. And I find myself saying it a lot when we implement things. I used to say, this used to be Jackie's favorite set. This used to be Lindsay's favorite set. This used to be Jory's favorite set. And I can envision the success of that by envisioning them doing it, but then we implement it for another kid. And then, and sure enough, what worked for Jackie doesn't work for Ashlyn, and we almost have to redefine that. But, I also learn from the players that we've had. This is a two-way thing. I mean, it is. I learned a lot from you, Courtney, with your approach to the game. I'll cite you an example. One thing that the Courtney Moses story that I probably tell most, you won't remember this, but we were down, and I don't know if at the time it was Run for the Roses, but we were in Lexington, and it was one of those Midwest summer days where, how hot and humid it gets. I mean, it feels like it's 110 degrees outside, and you're wearing it. And what's unique about summer basketball is sometimes you have two, and then when you played, Courtney, it wasn't abnormal to have 3, sometimes even 4 games in a day before really the NCAA came in and say, look, you guys are going to play 2. Okay. But I remember parking my car and walking to my air-conditioned hotel room and hearing a ball bouncing. And all I wanted to do was get into the lobby, because you know how it is when you had that heat and the air conditioning hits you, like it's euphoric, right? So, but I remember a ball bouncing, and I remember walking around a van, and you were doing 2 ball handling drills between basketball games, and it was 110 degrees outside. And I remember saying to you, like, what are you doing? Like, go inside, like get in some air conditioning, rest. Like, we play in 2 hours. And you looked at me square in the eyes, like these kids don't get it. This is where players are made. Is out here in hard work. I will tell that story a lot, because that work ethic, sometimes people don't see it, right? People don't see that sweat. People don't see the hard work behind it. And you can talk about it all you want, but until you actually see it, it doesn't really hit you. The last place I would have been was out there doing 2 ball handling drills for you. But Courtney, you had the best crossover of anybody that I've ever coached. The thing rolled on the ground. It was so low, you couldn't get to it. But that stuff's made in 100-degree weather in the hot pavement in the parking lot of the Holiday Inn Express in Lexington, Kentucky. And it's just awesome. So I tell that story a lot, Courtney.
Cool. Yeah. I once you started saying it, it started coming back to me. But that's why Jordan and I, my husband, have Compete Training Academy. We turned an old dairy barn. We poured concrete, got some goals up, but we're teaching that mentality of, you don't need and of course it's nice to have the air conditioned gyms, but like sometimes in the summer it's stinking hot in this barn. We have kids that drive, and like you're doing something that somebody else isn't doing, and you're developing toughness. So when it gets to the 4th quarter, you have that toughness in you. And I remember in high school, I played soccer, and so school got out at 3:10. Soccer practice started at like 3:45, 4 o'clock. And we had to drive to another town where the soccer fields were. Live in a small town, so it was in Swayze, Indiana, the only Swayze in the world. And I would go there. I'd get there. I couldn't wake out of school. I'd drive there, and I'd do that 2 ball handling before soccer practice. I'd be out there, and I remember my soccer coach would be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Come on, come over here." And then we'd like play pig or something. But that's where to all the players, aspiring players, like you got to do the little things. And you got to do them really, really well and get outside your comfort zone. And I forget, I think it was Muhammad Ali, somebody that was talking about they didn't start counting their reps on when they were doing like training until they were fatigued. And I think that's so critical that like if you can knock down a shot when you're tired, that's what's going to separate you. Like, who cares if you can come in the gym and you can come make 10 shots in the corner when you're not tired yet. You got to make
right.
it exhausted and train. So, but yeah, get me fired up there. So when it comes to player development, so let's take for example an Ashlyn Shade. Ashlyn Shade is on another level. She just her body type, her length, her strength, her work ethic. I think she's a super humble kid that's just hungry. What does an Ashlyn Shade need to work on player development wise, where she's at to prepare herself for the next level?
Yeah. Well, so I'll answer the question two ways. Okay.
Yep.
So when you play club basketball, so when I was first starting, when I had the Osbornes and the Reimers and the Moseses of the world, you guys had your trainers, but you didn't have your trainers. We did a ton of skill development and player development from a skills and drills perspective through club basketball. And so you talked about like hour-long training sessions. We don't do those hardly anymore. Do we do training sessions and skills and drills within our workouts? Yeah, absolutely. But everybody has their own trainer now. Some of them have their own, like a team of trainers. Some of them live in other states and they fly out there. I mean, kids on my basketball team now, train with people that are in Maine, and it's just crazy. I mean, you, for example, you will be you'll be on a team of 3 people in Indiana that will all train a kid. So having said that, I focus a lot more on the atmosphere around basketball, the mental approach to things. Where's your head at going into it? And look, I never played college basketball, but where does that credibility come from? It comes from the kids that tell me, hey, this is what I needed when I got to college, or I didn't need that. I mean, it's just feedback, right? I told, again, in that same meal, I was talking to Sid, and she just said, look, I had to get stronger. It was a strength thing for me. So it's going to be something different for everybody. For her, it's strength. But where does Ashlyn need to go? I mean, look, every part of Ashlyn's game is going to need improvement. We just focus a lot on kind of the mental aspect. You said Ashlyn wants to be the best, right? Well, we've had the best. We've had the Naismith Award winner. We've had 8 Miss Basketballs. We've had 9 McDonald's All-Americans. We know what the best is like. And so we try to instill the characteristics that those people told us were important to them, and maybe something sticks. And hopefully when Ashlyn reaches and achieves her goals, whatever they may be, reports back to us. So somewhere down there's a kid that's going to graduate in 2029, and we'll tell Ashlyn Shade stories. So what is it particularly that you ask? It's going to be something different for every kid. Maybe it's strength like Sid Parrish, but we will focus mainly on kind of the mental preparation. Here's what to expect when you get there. Look, the transfer portal's rich right now, right? There's a lot of people in there. And have we had kids in the transfer portal? Yeah, absolutely. But what keeps us going, I go back to that conversation about Hope Savory. Like, we want to stress fit, and we want to stress the ability to be prepared for the transition mentally, as much as the physical traits. And we leave a lot of the dancing with the chairs to you all. You get to do that now.
Absolutely. No, that's so crucial. We always say you have to treat the game like a pro. So, the pros taking care of, yes, the skill work, but like recovery is huge. You can't perform if you're not recovering, you're not sleeping right, you're not eating right, if you're not mentally in a right spot. Like that, all that encompasses, if you're not doing what's right in the weight room, if you're not getting good, speed and agility conditioning, like all that encompasses makes you a basketball player. So
that's right.
Yeah, it's so crucial. So you talked about the transition, kind of the change of where a lot of players have, their own trainers now. How has the landscape? I know when I played, we were Indiana Elite, Adidas. Now you guys are in the EYBL. How is the landscape of AAU? What's it look like nowadays?
Yeah, shoe companies got involved, right? So there's 32 EYBL teams in the country that compete in a league. It's a lot of fun for those kids. Under Armour has a very similar league. Adidas has a very similar league. Blue Star has a very similar league. There's independents who compete in individual tournaments, but there's a lot more sponsorship from shoe companies that are involved. I can't speak totally, with a lot of education about the other shoe circuits because I've always been with the EYBL. But what's neat about the EYBL is, everything that we try to do in club basketball, at least our club, is preparatory toward your collegiate experience. So even the way that the EYBL is structured, you have a semblance of like non-conference games. Even when the EYBL first came out, we used to be in these conferences, and you would play a non-conference schedule first, and then you'd play the teams within your conference, and then you would seed them in a tournament. 32 teams, one plays 32 and two plays 31. And if you win, you go right. If you lose, you go left. And one team's going to win 5 straight basketball games, and one team's going to be the Nike national champ. Well, where else do we see that? College basketball, where you play a non-conference schedule, you play a conference schedule, you seed them into a tournament of 64, and one team wins 6 straight games and they're the champ. So even with the way that the shoe companies have gotten involved, they've tried to help dump their resources into helping kids, particularly girls, prepare themselves for the college experience. And I think it's been great. But at the end of the day, it's still fun, right? When you did it, Courtney, it was fun, okay? But it was also, you're just driving to South Carolina to play in a tournament, okay? Now it kind of adds stakes to it, and it's kind of fun for these kids. People take a lot of pride in who won the EYBL or who won the Rise League and so on and so forth. So I think it's been great, and I love to see the girls have the opportunity because it's been around on the boys' side for a while, and that's Pandora's box that will open up there. But it is nice to see the girls have something that the boys had. I mean, Peach Jam, which is the boys' version of Nike Nationals, it is on ESPN. I mean, you can watch it. I mean, it's a major event. So again, how has the landscape changed? Well, shoe companies got involved, and it's not all that bad. It's really not, because I think their purpose of getting involved is helping provide some equality, which is all we've ever wanted for girls basketball.
That's incredible. I love hearing that. Two last questions. So one's going to pertain to recruiting, one's going to pertain to parenting and advice to parents. So first, we'll see. So you guys are all about, preparing the player for the next level collegiately, and you have a lot of players are being recruited. What type of advice do you give to your players when they're being recruiting? What are a few, like, these are non-negotiable things that you need to either be questions to ask or things to be looking for?
Yeah, when you're going through the recruiting process, we tell everybody that it's their recruitment. Okay. I mean, it's the colleges aren't running it. The parents aren't running it. The high school coach isn't running it, the athletic director, and certainly the club coach isn't running it. Okay. So I just work for whoever it is. Chloe Spreen. I'm on Team Spreen. Okay. I happen to be very involved in her recruitment, but and her and I have a good relationship, and she relies on me for recruiting advice. But I've had kids in the past that are completely different than Chloe, that just, quite honestly, I'll find out whether they commit or who's interested in them or who's offered them on social media like everybody else. It doesn't run through me at all. The reason why I give that background is however you want to run it, and I'm almost talking directly to the kid now, however they want to run it that way, because everybody works for you. And that goes to, listen, if I'm only going to make calls on Tuesday and Thursday nights from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock, then only make calls on Tuesdays and Thursday nights from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. I think by having a handle on it and having control, if you will, of that situation, it's going to help you manage your responsibilities. It's going to help you prioritize. But at the end of the day, it's what you want, and you're going to have more fun with it that way. So that's my advice, I think, is to just control the situation. Understand that they're your rules and you can set them however you want to set them. And college coaches, they'll abide by them. I mean, they're people say, well, their future employment's on the line. Well, yeah, it is, but they also understand that they're talking to, young girls who are just trying to prioritize their lives right now and try to figure things out along the way. So, but they'll be cool about it. So just make your own rules, stick to those rules, and use the resources that are available to you.
That's really good advice. All right, last question here. So, when it comes to parenting, so I know you're a dad of 3, and so when it comes to parenting, what advice? I know we have parents that listen to this podcast. Do you have to parents when it comes to parenting your kid just in their sports career? So we have people that listen to this, they're going to be a football player. So just in general, being a sport parent, what advice you got?
Yeah. Well, my advice might surprise you. I actually tell a lot of people this. Okay. Again, the resume: 9 McDonald's All-Americans, 8 Miss Basketballs, 9 runner-ups. Like, the people ask me all the time, what are some similarities with those kids? And I understand that there's exceptions, okay? And I don't know, I can't remember necessarily what Tim is like, but if you looked at most of them have they have parents that push their kids. Mm-hmm. Okay. So my advice to parents is, don't be afraid to push your kid. And people are like, whoa, what are you talking about, Danny? Like, but it's okay. But it honestly, like, if you just look back at it and you say, like, hey, I don't want to be the one that pushes my kid. But then you look at the 9 McDonald's All-Americans and you're like, well, they had parents that pushed them. My feeling is this: if the kid truly loves it, they want to be pushed. Mm-hmm. Now comes a time in their life where you might not be able to push them anymore. That's where somebody like me comes in. Quite honestly, most of the time I get a kid, their recruitment and their establishment as a great basketball player on a local and national scale is already complete. But they can't push their kid anymore because they've already pushed them to the limit beyond their ability to have an effect on it. So they call me and they're like, well, this kid's pushed people before. Let's have him do it. Right. But when I tell people that, it actually surprises them, because I don't know when it became bad to push your kid. Now, I'm not saying push them to the point of them wanting to quit, mm-hmm. but if your kid is special, they won't quit. Mm-hmm. They'll be driven by that. And so that's just something that I've seen in the past that has really kind of surprised me. So I answer the question that way a lot. I'm not here to tell anybody how to parent their own kid. I'm here to just collect the data, yep, and present it to you. And that's what it says. That's
really good. My parents were pretty laid back. They just
I knew as I was telling that story, I'm like, I don't think Tim pushed Courtney very much at all.
So this was my dad, like, typical. He'd be sitting in the stand just like this, like, not really say a word. My mom be sitting next to my brother games and be like, so they didn't play, sports growing up. My mom did. My dad ran track and cross country in high school, and then went in the family business. Mom stayed home with us, and she'd be sitting next to my brother, be like, was that good? Was that okay? Like, asking him questions. Yeah. But there's one. Yeah. So everybody disregard what I said. Go with what Courtney said. Not at all, because I have a good story to back it up. So I can remember when I was little, playing at this tournament, and sometimes there's some teams in those tournaments that are just they're not very good. And so you got to, you're on the good team. You got to get yourself up as a player. And I remember we were just kind of playing the quote down to the competition. And I remember after the game, everybody on our team wanted to go out to eat or all stay tonight, have some party at the hotel or whatever. My mom was like, no. She's like, if you're not going to play hard and compete, we're just going home. And I was like, oh, my mom was bringing the heat. And that was totally unexpected. And so I can remember I was younger, maybe 10 or 11. And my mom did that. And so I was like, all right, Mama's not playing no games. We got to go. Mom's not playing. You got to go. You got to go.
it does still have to be internal. I mean, there's the prerequisite, of course, like I was saying, like the kid has to want it.
Yep.
I think where you get in trouble and you hear those stories, Courtney, is when somebody tries to push their kid and they don't want to be pushed.
Yep.
Yes. That's where I think you can really get in trouble. Now, one might say too, like Danny, you're talking about McDonald's All-Americans. That's the 0.1% of the 0.1, but again, like I get that question a lot in some form or fashion. And so anyway, that's the way I answer, but that's a cool story about your mom. And I knew you would not disagree, but I knew that you would
disagree.
I knew Tim, because I knew Tim. I mean, Tim, like I had one conversation with the dude and he's always cheering. There's exceptions to the rule. I tweeted about Damon Evans, who's Dana's dad. He was tough on Dana. He was tough on Dana, but that dude was as supportive as any parent I've ever had for everybody else out there, which was the coolest thing. Like he would always sit, and we used to play in North Augusta, and the bench is like let's make it like in the stands. It's like 4 rows of the bleachers, and the first row of the bleachers in North Augusta where Peach Jam is played, Riverview Park. Like the parents are like in the huddle. And he always used to sit in the first row behind the bench. And it always I got used to it after a couple of years, but he was always so supportive of everybody else except Dana, which was, and look, Dana's going to be a top 5 pick in the WNBA draft. So the dude did something right?
That's for sure. Well, sweet. Hey, this was awesome. Very fun.
Yeah.
And look forward to following you guys through the summer. And hopefully we get some of those girls out here play some 3-on-3 like last summer.
I was gonna say,
that was fun.
I was gonna say, yeah. Thanks for having me on. It is really cool to see you doing big things. I'm a proponent of CTA, and we send a lot of kids your way. Continue to train our kids, and I would just ask. I mean, just keep growing the brand of girls basketball. Anybody that's heard me on any of these podcasts, I always say something ridiculous about evangelizing girls basketball, but it's true. There's great momentum right now. We were in Shane Laughlin's event, who ESPN is behind his name right now, and he tweeted about how Diamond DeShields and Sydney Parrish were at the event, and how that was great for the girls' game, and how we have so much momentum. But also there was, I saw Kai Hunter's going to IUPUI. I saw Ari Wiggins, who's going to Michigan. I saw Jayla Smith, who just won Miss Basketball, going to Purdue. I saw Maddie Nolan, who was an Indiana All-Star and at Michigan, playing on a highly ranked team in the NCAA tournament. Who else? I saw Kendall Bostic, who is now at Illinois. Multiple state championships and all college athletes, all coming back to support the girls' game. So I just encourage everybody. I mean, I think we've got some momentum right now, and we're reaching some people, and we're expanding our audience. People are starting to take notice. And so I would just tell everybody, let's just keep going on this thing, because we're doing well.
Amen. I love it. Hey, thanks, Coach.
Awesome. Thanks, Court.
See you. Have a good night.